I had my children on the floor. I was on my favourite blanket that my grandmother gave me on the floor like a cat.
And I realised in that moment the potential of what our bodies can really do as women.
Like I could feel his head, I could do my own internal, like, yeah, his head, I could feel it.
I was in tears, I was just in tears and overwhelmed with gratitude.
Hi and welcome to the Natural Birth Podcast, the podcast that is bringing embodied birth wisdom from women from all over the world sharing their natural birth stories. Don't forget to subscribe and download so that you can always have access to these empowering and positive natural birth stories. Hi, my name is Anna and I am the Natural Birth Podcast host. I'm a former midwife who left the system and I'm now the proud founder of Sacred Birth International, a woman-owned company with a mission to revolutionize the birth world and bring focus to the sacred and the natural intelligence of the birth process. We do this by providing world-class education, courses, programs, and coaching to equip women with the knowledge and the tools to have conscious pregnancies, empowering and positive birth experiences, and the most nourishing start possible for themselves and their babies postpartum. We also educate and mentor aspiring birth workers into sacred space holders and physiological birth advocates in the Sacred Birth Worker Mentorship, the Beyond a Doula training. If you'd like to work with me or take any of our courses, programs, or the mentorship, then head on over to sacredbirthinternational.com to find out more. Hi, Mia, and welcome to the Natural Birth Podcast. I'm so excited to hear your story today. I got in contact with you this autumn when I think you joined the village through the Natural Birth course, and shortly after that, you said, "Oh, I'm gonna apply for the Sacred Birth Worker Mentorship, and I'm gonna have a baby." And here we are.
Yeah.
Great to have you in the village, of course, and now you had your baby, and I'm so excited to hear about your story. Just the little information you've given me has just sounded so magical and so beautiful. So I can't wait to hear the fullness of your story, starting from conception. So do you want to share with us? I mean, you're from Canada, correct, originally, but you actually live in Norway.
Yeah, I'm actually from Montreal, Canada originally, so the French part of Canada. And I moved to Norway with my Norwegian husband. So now I've been living here for about like a year and a half. And yeah, it's been really beautiful so far.
Wow, beautiful.
Yeah.
And do you want to take us back to deciding to become pregnant? Because as I understand it, it was quite a conscious conception.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah, sure. So I feel like it starts the whole story kind of back before I even met my husband, actually. And I had been in a very committed and beautiful relationship with another man before I met him. And we'd been together for several years. We had a really amazing relationship. But I started feeling more and more like he wasn't the one that I wanted to have children with. And it kept coming up in my morning meditations. I was just feeling my current husband's energy coming in my field, and I was really feeling like I had to take a leap of faith and trust my intuition. And so that's what I did. So yeah, ended that relationship. We're still good friends now, so it's all good. And then just 3 months later, I was traveling in Costa Rica and I was at this hostel, and my now husband was at that same hostel, and that's how we met each other. And it was really love at first sight, like as soon as we saw each other, it was in the kind of restaurant area of the hostel. And it was just, this clear knowing that he was going to be the one that I would have children with when I saw him. And we just spent the evening talking. And just after that evening of talking, he asked me if I wanted him to postpone his flight back to Norway so we would have more time together. And I find it so interesting how every relationship brings out a different part of us. And like there's kind of themes that naturally emerge through each relationship. And with him, the theme of having kids really came up instantly. Like in the first few days that we spent together, we were already talking about having children and how much that means to us. And yeah, it just became like kind of the main topic of conversation from when we met, really. And so, yeah, uh, it was decided pretty quickly after we met that I would move to Norway to live with him. And at that time, he was living in an apartment in Oslo, which was quite nice, but I'm really more of a nature woman. So I felt like, yeah, like as our relationship was deepening, I was feeling that just before we have kids, I really wanted us to move to a place in nature to have a house. I felt more like a home, really. And we also wanted to get married before we had kids. So yeah, we kind of kept deepening our relationship for that time. And um, but I was really feeling so strongly the calling to have children with him, and really felt our son's soul like knocking on my door. And yeah, at that time we were using like the calendar method as our contraceptive method, and like pulling out. Sorry if that's too much information. Uh, and it started happening after like maybe a year into a relationship that every time he would pull out, I'd just start crying. Like my body was just not accepting to wait any longer for this child to come, you know? Um, yeah, I'm super curious to know if other women have had that experience, because when I kind of tell women about this, sometimes I get a bit of a like yeah, feeling that it's a shared experience. But for me, it was just like at some point really painful to wait any longer for to conceive this child.
I love that. And our bodies are so wise. It's
Yeah.
definitely, I can resonate to that. And also, some women definitely feel that grief when they get their period.
Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily, and I don't mean women who want to get pregnant. I mean
Yeah, like we
women.
weren't even trying
You know
at
what I
that
mean?
point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but also women
Mm-hmm.
who aren't even in a relationship, that aren't even,
Mm-hmm.
it's not even a thing. Like it's like this, and I don't say every woman, but definitely I know of women, and that as you bleed, there's a grieving in your body somehow. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
this, um, because of course the body's primed to have a baby. And
Yeah,
so it
absolutely.
becomes like a little mini kind of grieving of that, which did not
Mm-hmm.
happen that month as well. So that's
Yeah,
interesting you say that
absolutely.
about pulling out too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And yeah, so at some point we traveled to Sri Lanka about like a year and a half after we started dating. And once again, we're like at this beautiful beach resort and we're making love. And he pulls out, and I start bawling my eyes out. Like I was out of control at this point, just really feeling all the deep emotions. And at this point, I decided like, okay, we need to really get started on this journey of having kids. So at that point, I had been vegan and vegetarian for 7 years, and I felt like I really needed to start taking like animal protein again. So I started eating fish on this trip, and then meat again, and I started taking folate also during like as soon as I came back to Norway after that trip. And yeah, soon after that, so in February of last year, then had been 2 years that we were together. We were traveling to Thailand, and he proposed to me. So then we got engaged, and then we went back to Norway, and we found a dream house in the forest, really like the absolute dream house that we've been envisioning. And then it just really started feeling like everything was falling into place. Like we were engaged, we had the house, and yeah, we were planning initially to start like try conceiving during our honeymoon, but once again, just our son's soul was knocking on the door, and he was not like caring about our plans and our timelines. So yeah, my husband's a fisherman. So at some point in April, he was on a fishing trip, and I was looking at my app, like tracking my ovulation, and I saw that as soon as he was coming back from the fishing trip, I was going to ovulate. And I just knew in all my cells, like, okay, this ovulation is the one. Like, okay, we're not married yet, but we're engaged now. Feels safe enough for me. And let's just absolutely do this. So I actually booked a trip to Turkey because I was imagining that we'd conceive in this like kind of special environment. So we went on this trip to Turkey when he came back, and we had like a really mystical trip on this trip. We went to see like many ancient temples and like spiritual sites. And it was also a trip where my husband was feeling a lot of emotions. I feel like he was really kind of walking through his like initiation. He was really walking through his own fears and noticing all of them coming up during that trip just before we were going to conceive. And we had this one car ride on my ovulation day where he had a lot of emotions coming up, and we had like a very deep talk, and he was kind of really feeling what it means to actually have children and how like huge and irreversible it is, you know, of a decision to take. And so we arrived at our hotel room, and it was just crazy because there was this huge poster above the bed saying, "Fuck stress, have sex." That was just crazy. Like, it was not the kind of place where you would expect to see that poster, you know? It was like a pretty regular, fancy hotel, but just had this huge poster, "Fuck stress, have sex." So, yeah, that was the sign we'd been waiting for. So we obliged. And yeah, a few days later, I learned that I was pregnant. So
Wow, you had that strong intuition. I love that. How
yeah,
special.
yeah, it was so special. Yeah, and also just before we made love on that time with the poster, we did a prayer calling our son's soul in. Well, we didn't say son at that time, but just speaking with the baby and saying that we're ready to welcome you, and we're feeling ready, and we feel so much love for you already. And if this is your time, then please feel free to come in. Yeah. So that's how we conceived. And it was just such a beautiful, beautiful time. And it felt so perfectly aligned to do it then.
Mm. And how was your pregnancy?
Yeah. So I had a really smooth pregnancy. The first trimester, I got sick a lot, like most most women do, I feel. But yeah, it was a beautiful pregnancy. Our son was very, very active, so I could feel him moving a lot, which I loved. And yeah, I also prepared a lot for the birth during my pregnancy. So that was like lovely for me to have to feel really prepared and ready. I took the natural birth course, as you were saying earlier, and the prenatal class with our midwives. And yeah, read all the anime Gaskin books, and was doing this beautiful morning, um, like morning practice with prenatal yoga and meditation, journaling, and really tapping into my body wisdom and
Mm.
connecting with my heart and my baby every day. So yeah, it was a really lovely pregnancy,
Love
and quite like eventful as well, in the sense of like we got married during that time, and we moved into our new house, and so there was a lot of like action happening around, but I felt very peaceful and centered and grounded, and
Mm.
yeah, very supported as well by my husband and our friends and our family. So
Was it always
yeah,
obvious for you that you wanted to have a home birth?
yeah, for sure. Like from the second I knew I was pregnant, I for sure knew I wanted to have a home birth. But here in Norway, it's not that common, as you know, living in Sweden. Um, so there's like basically one um, like home birth clinic in Oslo called Min Fødsel. And originally I called them as soon as I knew I was pregnant. And I told them that I would probably be living in the village that I'm living in now. And at that time, they didn't serve that area because it was a bit too far from the city. So I was so sad when they said, like, no, we can't go that far. So it was kind of a grieving process for me at that time. And I was really looking for any other natural birth alternatives that were not the hospital. And I found this one like birth center that was in a hospital, and it didn't feel very aligned, but I was thinking, okay, well, this is kind of the best I can do. But at 28 weeks, I went to see my midwife with who I was doing the prenatal checks at the health station. And she knew that I really wanted to have a home birth. And she told me, like, but you should really call them back and check if maybe they changed their policy since you got pregnant. Because she thought maybe she knew someone, another patient from that area who was giving birth with them. So she really encouraged me to call them back and try to convince them. And so I did, and it actually worked out. They said that they would be happy finally to come all the way to our village. So I was so grateful. And so at 28 weeks, I just signed the contract with them, and yeah, it felt 100% aligned. That's what I wanted from the start. And as soon as I knew it was possible for them, I just felt like, yes, let's do this.
I love that. I love that so much for you.
Yeah. Mm,
Anything else that
yeah.
you want to mention about your pregnancy before we dive on into your birth story?
Well, one thing that really came up with choosing to have a home birth is uh, how you really need to conquer any people-pleasing tendencies that you may have. And I feel like that's something that is super useful for motherhood as well. But like almost, I think for all women, when you choose a home birth, there's going to be at least like one family member or someone around you who's not going to feel comfortable with that decision, or that's going to bring up a lot of fear. And at least for me, that came up, that some of the people around us didn't feel good about that decision. And it was really a beautiful initiation of like owning my truth and really stepping into what feels right and what I know is right for me and for my baby, and um, like discovering my voice within that and choosing what I know is true and right. And yeah, like being patient with the people around me, but being like in my integrity, and
Mm.
yeah, leaving those people pleasing tendencies behind. But that was definitely like a pearl of wisdom that came for me throughout this pregnancy and throughout deciding to have a home birth. Yeah.
Yeah, and what a beautiful, process to go through, because it really does, as you say, inform you also as you come into motherhood. And of course, you can continue to be the good girl and people pleaser throughout
Mm-hmm.
pregnancy, birth, and into the postpartum and into your mothering. But I think it really serves you, and it is a beautiful offering. It's a beautiful invitation to really
Mm-hmm.
step into your sovereign woman, into your
Yeah.
adult woman, into your like, fully claiming your sovereignty in decision making and in being here in
Mm-hmm.
the world. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the greatest like teachings that I got out of this whole pregnancy and birth, was really that every aspect of the birth was what I chose. And I really, like, I was proud of myself for staying really in my truth and not getting swayed by opinions and fears, and really just staying in integrity. So that was a huge, huge thing for me.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So let's dive into your birth story now. I cannot wait to hear this juice. So tell us, did you have any early signs of labor approaching for you at all? Or was it big bang? Here we go.
Yeah. So also, like I feel like this is so typical of birth stories, but I had my mom who lives in Canada, of course, and who really wanted to be with me for my birth, and I really wanted her to be there. So she actually flew all the way from Canada, and she stayed with us for 3 weeks, to really like hopefully be there for the birth. But yeah, she had all of her 4 children at 37 weeks. And so we kind of all thought that that would be the case for me as well, right? Like we have a pretty similar body shape, metabolism. I was thinking, okay, like probably this is going to be an early bird. But yeah, 40 weeks, went by, nothing was really happening. I was having Braxton Hicks, but I had kind of all the way, like, since my second trimester, really, I was having Braxton Hicks. And then in the third trimester, sometimes they were coming like more like rhythmically, and they were, especially at like evening time, sometimes I'd get some like every 5 minutes. And it happened several times during my mom's stay that I kind of thought maybe something's starting because the Braxton Hicks were picking up, but it never transformed into actual contractions, and it never got like painful. I don't really want to use this word, but it didn't get like intense. It was just the same feeling, but becoming closer and closer. So my mom, my lovely mom, went back to Canada. And 5 days later, the real thing started. So it was on my husband's birthday, actually. Yeah, so really sweet that our son decided to come on his birthday. And at this point, I was 41 weeks and 1 day. So not early after all. But it's actually great that we thought he was coming at 37 weeks because we had the whole birth space ready since 37 weeks. Like we had the bath already inflated. We had like the affirmations on the wall, the fairy lights. We had like even we created a box, like a wooden box for the cord burning ceremony. And yeah, everything was ready. I also started a digital detox at 37 weeks. So I really was super embodied at this point and really connected with myself. And the space was ready. I was doing my daily meditations like in the bath, really connecting with the space and visualizing how I was going to give birth there. And so, yeah, on the morning of my husband's birthday, we made love. And then as soon as I got up, I saw my bloody show was there. So that was the first time we saw any like mucus or any blood. So it was very exciting. And yeah, I just knew from that moment, as soon as I saw the blood, I was like, okay, it's happening today. So, but since we had so many days before where it kind of like started and then stopped, or it didn't really start, but I felt a lot of Braxton Hicks, I was not wanting to get my hopes up too much, but I also had this knowing that, okay, this is different now. So I went for a walk. We have this beautiful lake close to our house, and that day was really sunny and it's a beautiful day. So I went for this beautiful winter walk. And it was my husband's birthday, so he invited some family members over to have some like homemade pizza. But I didn't feel like I could really engage at this point. I felt like I needed to be by myself and be more inwards and rest. And I'm really happy that I listened to my intuition. So I just like stayed in our room and took a nap and did like a belly massage and did actually your dream birth visualization in bed. And yeah, slept for some time. And then I got up around like 5:30 p.m. in the afternoon. I wasn't even having contractions in bed at all, but as soon as I got up, they started. And then I knew it was the real thing. It felt nothing like the Braxton Hicks that I had before. It was also a lot of back pressure for me, which is interesting because the baby didn't end up being posterior, but I was feeling a lot of back pressure and yeah, more of a crampy feeling. Yeah, it just totally like another sensation. And so, yeah,
I
at
guess
6 weeks, yeah.
when it comes to back labor, it can be a sign of posterior, but we're also just so differently designed. And our womb actually, it doesn't like just lie the same in all women's bodies. Like it's just,
Mm-hmm.
we're so unique. And so that's why
Yeah.
sometimes you can just be a person that has a lot of back labor. And, for anyone who hasn't had children, we all know how it is to have our period, right? And you can feel that
Mm-hmm.
a lot in your lower back, for example. And that's just quote unquote, your
Yeah.
bleed, right? So, yeah, I think it's good to be open to just having like your labor can just be in all kinds of places. And I love that you
Mm-hmm.
listen to this podcast, some women go like, I felt it a lot in my legs. I felt it a lot, in like weird places, right? So that you just don't think about. You think it's going to be just in your tummy. And I love that. I love that everyone has different stories, and just it makes you go like, okay, I need to prepare that I can just feel all kinds of sensations when I go into labor.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for me, it was really the womb, the back, and then the hip flexors. That's where I felt it the most. And yeah. So then it was around 6 p.m. that we told our beautiful family guests that they should go home because I was really starting to feel more. I was just staying in the bathroom at this point and like breathing through the contractions, trying to like close the light and just needed to be by myself with the sensations. And yeah, they left. And my husband was just looking at me and he was like, okay, I'm going to call the midwife. And, in all the stories, it's usually too early. So I've told him, like, no, we don't need to call her now. But he could see that I was already pretty much in labor land at this point. I was like moving around in these special ways. I was kind of humming. I couldn't stay in one place. I needed to move around. And I was having pretty frequent contractions at this point, like every 3 minutes. And they were just coming on stronger and stronger. So yeah, he did call the midwife. And she listened to me while I was having a contraction and she was like, okay, I'm coming now. So she came. And it took her like 30 minutes to arrive. And during those 30 minutes, it really picked up as well. At this point, I was having contractions every 2 minutes. They were really strong. I just got naked, turned on all the candles, turned on the meditation music. And at this point, I was kind of laboring on the back of a chair, like with the back facing my tummy. And yeah, then I was kind of in labor land fully. Time kind of dissolves at this point. But I was really using my voice a lot. That's something that came up during the birth. I was really vocalizing. I was kind of singing, chanting, doing these like ancient sounding kind of tribal sounds with each contraction. Um, it was really magical. And as a lot of women say, like I never heard myself doing these sounds before. Like they were really coming from some kind of channeled dimension of my ancestors, of my body just knowing exactly which vibration I needed to navigate these contractions. And so the midwife arrived around 6:30 p.m. And she, like at this point, I didn't even, say hello or welcome. I was really deep in my own experience. And she told me later she thought I was already in very active labor at this point. Um, yeah, I was really in my own space. And she was so lovely, the midwife. She was really respectful of the process and really hands off. She just arrived and she read my birth plan that I had printed and was kind of, yeah, held space. She didn't talk much. She just was so beautiful, just holding space for me. And my water never really broke. That was a really interesting thing about this birth. There was never any gush. It was more like a trickle that happened around the time that she arrived. And it was actually very bloody. So that was interesting as well. Yeah, it was like kind of this trickle of blood coming out, like bloody water, but with kind of a lot of blood. So it was quite interesting. And yeah, I remember at this time I wasn't feeling worried, but I was kind of wondering like, what is this like trickle of blood? I wasn't expecting that. But the midwife was so calm, and I asked her a few times, like, how do you feel about this trickle of blood? She was like, yeah, that's fine. Don't worry. You're doing great. Just, yeah, keep doing what you're doing. So that's what I did. And
I can say like this. I mean, I'm curious to hear the rest of the story and I'll comment more about it maybe after. But, especially as we're coming closer to birth, and you have to remember, like, so the cervix and everything, it's and the membranes, they're quite sensitive, and also, your cervix is opening, and so that's where the blood can come from, just the opening of the cervix, and
Yeah.
just that it's very vascularized, and there's no
Mm-hmm.
danger with that, right? Of course, my midwifery brain also thinks about, obviously, if someone is bleeding throughout labor, well, rich, kind of fresh blood. It sounds like for you, it's like it's watered out. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't, maybe, I don't know, you have to correct me obviously because I have no idea, but if I would see like fresh blood, it could also be potentially a partial abruption of the placenta.
Mm-hmm.
That could so I mean, bleeding can be so normal in labor. It just depends on
Yeah.
what it looks like and how much it is, and
Yeah, it wasn't much, but it
yeah.
was just this kind of trickle mixed with water. Um,
Sounds like the cervix, just sounds like birth. Birth,
yeah.
birth has blood,
Yeah, birth has
usually.
blood.
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. So I kept having these really intense contractions, really intense vocalization through each contraction, like really, yeah, chanting, singing. That's what was getting me through. And around 7:40, like I know the time because she actually took notes, but if it wasn't for her notes, I'd have no idea about time at this point. But around 7:40, she like told me that she thought it was a good idea that I went in the tub. So my husband filled the tub and I just went in the water and it felt so amazing. It was just the best and most amazing feeling to get in the water. And I really felt like being at the spa. And I remember I thought and said that several times, like, oh, I'm just at the spa. Like the water was just the perfect temperature and with the meditation music playing, and I had some like essential oils around. And it really felt, and that's something that I loved about labor and that I really want to emphasize so that women know this. Like the contractions are intense, but then the breaks in between are like you actually really get to rest in between. At least that was my experience. It really felt um like the contractions were quite short, or at least that's how I experienced them. Like they lasted like 1 minute maximum, and then I got like a minute or two to just breathe and be in the water and kind of gather my strength. And with the breaks, it felt super manageable the whole time. There was never any time during the labor that I thought, okay, this is too much. I can't do this. Or so I really knew I was going to get a break soon. And yeah, during that break, I was just at the spa.
I think that's just such a beautiful kind of key thing to, if women can hold on to that, if you can really program your mind, like really remembering, like,
Hmm.
I can do anything for a minute. And then
Exactly.
as you come out of that, if you can fully relax and like even find pleasure in, like, I'm at the
Mhm.
spa, I'm in the pool. If you can,
Yeah.
that is what your mind is filled off, then you are going to both go through the process, I think, with more ease and open quicker because you're full of pleasure and trust and surrender and relaxation in between, compared to which some women can get into, like that, like dreading the next contraction or like
Hmm.
fearing it or something. Then you get into the fear, tension, pain cycle. So this is key
Yeah.
information you're saying right now. Like if ever, like
Hmm.
everyone's listening, this is the mantra you need to have. Like you can do anything for a minute, and in between, you just get floppy and relaxed and just fall
Yeah.
asleep, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was really, really present for me throughout the whole birth. Um, yeah, I can do anything for a minute. And also, I remembered there was this one episode on the podcast. I don't remember what the woman's name was, but she was sharing that throughout her whole labor, whenever something felt good, like if, someone gave her a sip of coconut water and that tasted good, or if someone pressed on her back and that felt good, or anything that felt good, she really would say it like, ah, this feels good. And somehow it kind of hacked her her body and brain to feel like, ah, this is actually kind of a nice feeling. And so that really stuck with me. And I used that during my labor. Whenever something felt even just a little bit good, I would really say it. I would say, yeah, this feels amazing. This feels great. Yes. And that really, really helped me a lot.
Well,
So,
suggestion is so powerful. I mean, this is the
mhm.
thing. So much of birth is actually the brain, like the mind. We think of it as like, of course, well, the thing is, like your body will give birth, like most of the time,
Yeah.
right? Of course, there's always going to be some women and babies that need some help, but most of us will be able to give birth fine. It's our minds that
Hmm.
can screw us over, truly.
For
And
sure.
so this is
Absolutely.
the thing, like if you can hack your brain, you can hack your mind. If you really get this, and this is in life, because birth is like a microcosmos of life, truly,
Hmm.
right? It teaches
Yeah.
us so much of life. And that's why I think when you're a birth worker, which you're gonna dive into soon, when you do this line of work, like you learn so much from birth. I
Hmm.
learned so much from each woman I serve in the birth portal and the mystery of birth, and no birth is the same. Like, even if it's like similar components, like it's wildly different every time. And there's so much
Yeah.
wisdom. And it teaches us about life and trusting in the natural flow of life. And it's
Hmm.
a key thing in life, isn't it? Like if we can program our minds to be in uncomfortable situations, but like go like, I can handle this, or like even I enjoy this.
Yeah.
And you know how people go like, I'm gonna have an orgasmic birth, I'm gonna train my brain for that. I'm like, sure, yeah, go for it. Imagine you doing that in life. I'm gonna have orgasmic life.
Yeah.
And you just
Just gonna
suggesting every
make
day,
love
like,
to the
woo, this is
universe.
yummy, feeling good.
Hmm. Yeah.
Imagine that. Let's go for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I really feel like that was the most helpful thing to just stay connected to some form of pleasure and also reminding myself like this is good, this is what I've been waiting for. Uh, like this is great. It's my body just showing its amazing wisdom by allowing me to birth. This is a blessing. Like I kept really reminding myself of that too. And yeah, it was so, so beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. And also my husband was such like a rock star throughout the whole experience. He was just so supportive and loving, and I really wanted him to just be close to me the whole time. So the midwives were more doing the practical things like making sure the tub was at the right temperature, bringing me coconut water, bringing me these like organic mango popsicles that I had, and um, yeah, so they were doing all the more practical things, and then my husband, was just staying with me, and I could hold on to him, and he was really looking into my eyes when I opened my eyes, and he just kept saying these sweet affirmations, but not talking too much either, which was great. He was just saying like, "Ah, I'm so impressed. You're so amazing. You're a goddess. Yeah, I love you." Just these beautiful reinforcements. And also, he kept like one thing that he kept saying was, um, "I'm really impressed." Like he made it sound like I was just like doing such an amazing job and everything was going like better than he thought. And he kept saying that too, like, this is you're handling it even better than I thought you would. And um yeah, so that was helpful as well
Well,
to just
it is
feel
impressive though. I love that. And I think
yeah.
a lot of men are impressed, and the ones who are like in their mature masculine and really truly love
Hmm.
their women and everything, they are impressed. The ones that are not get intimidated by the power they see.
Hmm.
And I really
Yeah.
want women to hear that. And this is really important for birth workers. And I think birth workers know this, but if you don't, when women get pregnant, and especially also like postpartum, like this is a downer in your amazing story, but I just want to say this, like
Hmm.
the number one reason women die is from men, their husbands or their partners
Hmm.
in pregnancy and postpartum continuum. And I think that this is the thing, that when a woman becomes pregnant, all of a sudden she really steps into her power, whether she wants to or
Mm.
not. It kind of forces her into like really claiming it when she becomes a mother, right? And
Yeah.
also if he witnessed her in birth, because seeing a woman in birth, whoa, like you see that she's the superior being that can birth life. Like that
Yeah,
is the most impressive thing out there. Like I
for
agree with your
sure.
husband. He's not joking there. I can understand that he was impressed. And that's what I witness with men,
Hmm.
and I've only witnessed like absolute awe. Awe.
Yeah.
Oh, and I keep telling this on this podcast, but especially men who see women birth at home,
Mm-hmm.
because then they really realize, because no one's touching you, no one's intervening, so that
Yeah.
your man gets to see you birth that baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
No doctor, no nurse, no midwife is like meddling, like there can be more of in
Mm-hmm.
hospital. Like they really get to witness you in your ultimate power and you
Yeah.
transcending and you like facing these really huge waves and you birthing new life. Like,
Mhm.
of course he was impressed. Like it is so
Yeah.
impressive. It's so
Yeah.
incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And also he became the biggest home birth advocate after this experience, of course.
Of
At
course.
first, yeah, when we first talked about having a home birth, he was a bit skeptical about it.
Hmm.
Never really heard about it or didn't have any experience with anyone around him having that. And yeah, he was a bit skeptical. But then after actually experiencing it, he's so sweet. Like I've heard him talking on the phone with some guy friends or with his brother and saying like, yeah, the cascade of intervention and all the good hormones that women get if they stay at home. And he became a super advocate for it now. So it's
You know,
really, really
that
sweet to see.
I know it's amazing. And it's such a common story.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's very common that a man will start out being the logical person that he is, questioning it because of the narrative that he's grown up with, just as us.
Yeah.
And they become just the biggest advocates because they, of course, they witness their woman go through this amazing rite of passage. Mm.
Hmm. Yeah, for
Mm.
sure. Yeah. So, Um, another thing I want to share about my birth is that it was really important for me to not get any vaginal checks throughout the birth, and I'm so happy that I really chose to do that and like upheld that throughout the whole labor. Because then I got to do my own internal checks during the labor, and that was the most magical part of it, and really what I'm gonna remember all my life. Like I'll never forget the sensation of at some point in the bath, I started feeling like, okay, now it's a different sensation. I feel really ripe. I feel really open, and I think the head is starting to descend. And so I just like put in my finger, and I actually felt the head, and it wasn't that far, It was just like, yeah, maybe like half of my finger, half of my index finger. And I was quite surprised at this point because I thought like, okay, I'm this far, and I didn't get any crisis of confidence. I never even through the whole birth said anything negative, you know. So I was very amazed and surprised to see that. I was really positive the whole time, and like whenever I spoke, I was saying like I'm strong. I like this feels good with different things they were bringing to me. Just singing and chanting, saying to my husband, "I love you." Like that was really what my words were doing throughout the pregnancy, were just like appreciating the experience. And yeah, so I felt the head, the contractions kept coming. And at some point, it was actually my own decision and my own feeling that I wanted the midwife to just confirm that what I felt was the head. So I asked her, like, could you just like put a finger in here in the tub and check if it's actually the head? And since I wrote in my birth plan that I didn't want that, she really asked me, like, are you sure that you want this? And yeah, she was amazing, yeah, beautiful midwife. And uh, at this point, I really felt that I did want it. So it was really an empowered decision. And I asked her, yes, like I said, yes, um, please do. And so she just like put her finger, I didn't even feel it at this point. Um, it was kind of like a very soft and gentle experience. And she just looked at me with the biggest smile and she said, well, you're fully dilated. And yes, this is the head. So that's the only vaginal check I got throughout the whole labor. And it was her saying I was fully dilated. That was the head. And it was just such an amazing and beautiful confirmation. I already knew this, but it was just beautiful to hear her confirming that. And soon after that, the contractions started kind of shifting over to more pushing contractions. I could hear it in the sound I was making. So it would be like a kind of like chanting scream and then the at the end. So that's how you could really know that, okay, the pushing has started now. And yeah, I would definitely say that for me, the most intense, challenging part was the pushing phase. And it's quite interesting because I heard so many women saying that was the like easiest and best part for them. But for me, that was like the biggest, um, yeah, like the biggest fire to walk through was the pushing. And of course, since that was the biggest challenge, it's also what I feel the most proud about now and what I remember the most fondly because it was such like a huge thing for me to go through. So just knowing that I did it, I feel so proud about that. Because yeah, like just the back pressure and the sensations I was having in my whole like pelvic area as I was pushing was really intense. And like at some point, I really felt the head coming, and was like, wow, okay, actually, if I'm gonna get this baby out, like this is what I have to do. I have to push him through. And of course, that's the whole thing of birth, right? But for me, it kind of clicked really when I was experiencing it. Like, oh, okay, he actually has to be pushed through. Oh, wow. And also, interestingly enough, my contractions got like really weaker at this point. Um, like they were lasting a lot less long and they kind of spaced out as well as I was pushing. But now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm really grateful that it did because I can see how my body was really just protecting me and seeing that the pushing was so intense and was demanding so much of my presence and energy. It felt like my body knew that I needed longer breaks in between to just really come back to the spa experience and just rest and like gather my strength and like kind of be in a positive mindset for the next pushing contraction.
Yeah, beautiful. And that's quite common that it does shift, the energy
Hmm.
shifts. And
Yeah.
I've said this before, but literally some women will fall asleep in between the bearing down. She's
Hmm.
like pushing her baby out and then like having that in between the worlds and like just fully relaxing in between. And it does, but it's it's so magical. Like it just, it's this time vortex
Hmm.
in that
Really.
end sometimes, especially with water births. Like
Hmm.
it's just this magical in between worlds, in between time. And
Mm.
everyone's usually like so quiet and
Yeah.
it's magical. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really how it was. And everyone in the birth space, the two midwives that were there and my husband were so respectful of this like sanctuary and sacred space. They were really like not saying any words that were not necessary, you know? Like everything felt so intentional, every movement, every touch, every word. Yeah, I felt really, really honored in that space. And yeah. And through every time I had one of those pushing contractions, I'd check again with my finger. And it was just wonderful to feel my son's head coming down more and more every time. Um, it was just such a special feeling to feel like, okay, I could really experience that like the work I was doing was actually bearing fruit and he was actually really coming down. Yeah, all the way until his like the crowning moment and the ring of fire. Um, I don't remember that I experienced it as that like intense. I think because I knew that it was so close now. And the whole process of the whole birth was so quick that I was just really like amazed at this point that whoa, we're already at this point. Just so magical, right? Like yeah, I was just blown away at this point. So I felt the ring of fire, and then in one more contraction, his head came out, and I really got to like feel his head under the water, feel his little face. It's just so beautiful. And then I had one more pushing contraction, and his whole body came out. And I was kind of like crouching forward on the edge of the tub, and the midwife was behind me, and my husband was also behind me. So she kind of like helped my husband catch our baby, and then he placed the baby on my chest. So yeah, So beautiful. And the first thing I said, was, "Oh, that wasn't that bad." And
Isn't
I
that
saw it.
funny?
Yeah. And I saw in the birth video that I said that like 3 times. I was really high at this point, and I didn't feel, that's really interesting too. I felt very conscious and aware, and I felt like I thought at that time that I was feeling very normal because I felt so aware of everything happening. But when I listened to the like birth video now, I see that I was totally high on birth, saying all sorts of really interesting things. Yeah, I repeated 3 times. "Ah, wasn't that bad? Wasn't that?" Yeah.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I kept saying, "Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God." I was just looking at my baby and feeling so just blown away by the mystery of life and how just God and life and my body and like created this amazing being, beautiful soul coming to the world. I was just blown away. Hmm.
It is
Yeah.
mind-blowing. It's still so mind-blowing to me. Doesn't
Mhm.
matter, I think, how many years you're in this profession and seeing women give birth and babies coming to the earth, it still is just the absolute honor and privilege and
Yeah.
just magic. And I think, oh, yeah, there's just nothing better. Moves me to
Hmm.
tears just thinking about it. It's just what an honor to go through it, what an honor to witness it. It's just, there's just nothing more
Yeah.
magical.
Mm. Yeah, really. And just seeing your child's face for the first time, looking into their eyes, it's like looking into the pure divine source, like just I felt so much wisdom in his eyes when I was looking at him. And he was very calm as well, as a lot of water babies are. Like he did a little cry just to show us, like, yeah, I'm doing good, but it felt like a symbolic cry. And he was very quiet then, just looking around. Had these big, beautiful, bright eyes, just looking around the room and taking it all in.
Mm.
And we had this little plot twist that happened then. Like we were planning to do a cord burning ceremony, prepared all the little box for that. But as like my son was being brought to my chest, the cord actually broke.
Mm.
Um, but it's interesting because obviously this is not what I was planning, but it felt so calm and so okay in the moment, right? The midwives didn't even talk as this was happening. They were just like, like climbed the cord and just like made sure I could have my baby on me. And it was just like a totally normal thing, it didn't feel stressful at all. And he
Yeah.
was already breathing and he already had his little symbolic cry. So, yeah, of course, I would have loved for him to get all the beautiful blood. So it's like not optimal. And for the next birth, I'm going to make sure to be aware that this is a possibility. But for this birth, it was totally, yeah, just fine. And I feel like that was also a pearl of wisdom that I got from this birth was that even when things don't necessarily go as planned, it can still be peaceful and beautiful and perfect the way it is.
Yeah.
That's really how it felt. Yeah.
My first thought is like, I wonder what that means for his birth imprint. Like, is he showing you that he's just this super independent little boy who's gonna be like, you know, instantly, his cord is kind of uh severed or whatever you want to say. And he's like,
Yeah.
aha, ta-da, here I am, and
Yeah.
I'm
I don't
fine,
need that.
and I'm cool, and I'm calm, and mom, like I'm all right. Like
Yeah.
like be sure that I'm all right. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't worry about me. Yeah. That definitely sounds like him, actually. Yeah. Definitely sounds like him. Already now he feels like a very independent little boy.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
so
That's really true.
curious. I love talking about birth imprints and like, yeah, so curious how all babies are born and how they lie in the tummy and like
Mm-hmm.
some breech babies really like they want to be so close to their mother's heart, and they might be these babies that are not so easily independent maybe in life. I don't know, it's interesting to know
Yeah.
future for these babies and what
Mm.
that imprint means.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So cord snapped. Actually, that's one of the things with water birth it's still a very small chance. I've only had it happen once, and it wasn't in
Mm-hmm.
water birth. That there's just a slight increase of chance of that happening.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, all was fine.
Yeah. And actually, it's interesting because after the birth, the midwives measured the cord and they saw that it wasn't very short. So it's interesting that it broke. They thought maybe what happened is that my placenta was lying really high in my
Mm.
uterus, and that maybe that's why, because it was just very high, and then the cord had a bit less like space to be stretched.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Or your baby
Yeah.
was like, I'm going to show you from the get-go that I am an independent little boy.
Yeah. Yeah, but that actually feels really right. When you say it, I feel a kind of truth landing, and somehow I think that's part of why it snapped. Yeah.
You can have that in
Yeah.
his birth story when you tell him his birth
Yeah.
story. Because you were
Yeah.
such an independent little boy. You were so ready to go into the world and just get going. And you just went, snap, mom.
Yeah, exactly. And even the stump, like the little part that stayed in his belly button fell off after like 4 days or 5 days, so pretty quickly as well. He just feels like a little soul that was so eager to be in the world. He was very ready to be here and ready to be like on his own, just doing his own thing. Mm.
Beautiful, amazing.
Yeah. Mm.
So, did you have birth the placenta in the pool as well, or did you get out for that?
No, we actually got out. We stayed in the pool, I don't know how long, for yeah, maybe like 10, 15 minutes, just like cuddling with our baby in the pool. And then we transitioned we had like a mattress that we installed on the side. So we just went there and we did the breast crawl, which was so cute. And he's like a very active baby as well, so he crawled pretty fast and just got there and latched and yeah, had this sweet moment with him. And 30 minutes after he was born, I felt like, okay, now I'm ready to birth the placenta. So my husband just held our son skin to skin, and I went to the toilet. And the midwives put like the little box that we prepared for the placenta in the toilet bowl, and I coughed, and the placenta just kind of flopped out into the box. And it was such an amazing feeling. Wow. It felt like such a relief, and the feeling itself was kind of good. Like it was just, yeah, amazing to have the placenta coming out. Mm,
Yeah, it's that final relief, isn't it? That's when
yeah.
you are complete after birth. Like, not until the
Hmm.
placenta is birthed have you finished birthing.
Yeah, exactly. And I really felt that. And I was so happy after it came out. I was just like, wow, like I did it. Everything went so beautifully. It was just like really my dream birth, really what I was visualizing in the dream birth visualization that I have in the Natural Birth podcast. It was actually even better than what I was envisioning. I felt so safe. It felt so sacred. The space around was so beautiful. The energy was beautiful. Like everyone in the space was so loving and present, and I felt really positive and empowered and like at the spa. That was really, yeah, my experience was just like really perfect. It felt really perfect for me. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. And
Mm,
that is the power of doing visualization.
yeah.
That is the power of doing that regularly, doing that dream birth visualization.
Hmm.
And I mean, I've had several women coming on this podcast telling me exactly that it actually really came down to exactly how they had envisioned it. And that's the power of when you understand how to program your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was something very important for me, especially throughout the last trimester. And even I would say from 37 weeks to the birth, I was really doing that meditation every day, sometimes twice a day, and also listening to those like some hypnobirthing videos on YouTube. just to really connect with my body and to have these beautiful thoughts and like beautiful affirmations coming through. And they really came through during the birth. I was really having these
Yeah.
little like snippets of different input that I got about birth, like through the podcast, through the meditation I'd been doing, through this hypnobirthing, through like all these different experiences. They really came together during the birth, and they were really coming through these messages. So it was so special. Yeah, and the placenta for now, it's still in our freezer, and the plan is that in the spring or in the summer, we're gonna plant it in our backyard of our house with a tree. So we're gonna have a beautiful ceremony then. Mm. Although we didn't get to do the cord burning ceremony, but we're gonna have the tree planting ceremony. So that's gonna be beautiful as well.
Yeah, beautiful. Next time.
Mhm.
Just save it for next time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and another little interesting thing that happened that was kind of unplanned or could have been stressful, but actually wasn't, was that like I did lose a bit of blood, but it wasn't that much. I lost like 400 milliliters of blood throughout the birth, but I have pretty low blood pressure to start with.
Mm.
And so at some point, like after I birthed the placenta, I went back on the mattress to lay down with my son for some time. And then at like 2:30 in the morning, I went to pee at the toilet. And this, like, I wasn't expecting that much after pain. So that was something I was kind of surprised about. And that is also part of the pearls of wisdom I'm going to share after. But yeah, as I was peeing, I was having a lot of pain. And when I stood up after that, I fainted for a few seconds. So the midwives were both around me at this time, and they kind of like caught me. And it could have been kind of a scary experience to faint, but actually, I had a really blissful fainting experience. I just remember getting up from the toilet and then being in this like serene black space and opening my eyes. And my first thought was like, oh, that was so nice. I was just in this like very beautiful, like pain-free, blissful space. And when I opened my eyes, I had these two beautiful midwives like smiling at me with the most loving and warm eyes, and smiles. And they were kind of like massaging my legs, holding my legs up, and with really no stress. Like they were just smiling. And my husband was also smiling and having my son on his chest. And he was like, oh, you fainted for a few seconds, but you're fine. Don't worry. And yeah, it was just something that could have been stressful, but was actually like a kind of blissful experience.
Yeah.
So I laid back down, and the midwife brought me candy, which I never usually eat, but in that moment, it really hit the spot. It was
Yeah.
really perfect. These like super good, like kind of peach candy. It was really perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, we're also different with if you have low blood pressure, it's definitely something that can easily happen to you,
Mm-hmm.
even if you don't
Yeah,
lose a
yeah.
lot of blood, right? And some people can lose like a liter and they're barely like
Yeah.
notice it. It's so interesting
Mm-hmm.
that we're also different, and it's just good to know who you are, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And also, that's the thing with beautiful midwives. It's just the care is so different. There's such a different
Yeah.
approach to all kinds of things that, if you had fainted in the hospital, I think there would have been a bit more
Probably.
chaos
Us.
in like people running into the room and a little bit like, oh, do this or whereas it just when you're at home, you bring in other dimensions into your care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You understand that actually your calmness and your groundedness and your regulated nervous system will also help a situation that, okay, she fainted here. Well, we know what to do. We'll just do it in a calm manner because we don't need to stress anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it was very lovely because actually, since I fainted, one of the two midwives decided to stay over for the night. So that was just so amazing of her that she stayed over. So she just slept in our guest room and was there until the next morning just to make sure everything was fine.
Beautiful.
So that it felt really comforting to have her presence. So we could still be just in our little love bubble with me, my husband, and our son in our bed. But just knowing that she was there, she was kind of this motherly presence that felt really safe in case we needed something.
Yeah, amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
So if you had a first-time mama in front of you right now who's about to have her first baby and she really wants to have a natural and empowering birth experience, what advice and pearls of wisdoms would you give to her?
Mm. Yeah, I love this question so much, and I've heard it so much on many episodes, so it's an honor to be sharing my pearls of wisdom now. I would say the first one is to really train your mind as much as possible to be in the present moment. And this is something you can start doing before you even get pregnant, but especially throughout your pregnancy, and I would say even more throughout the last trimester. Really training your mind to not anticipate the future and not dwell on what happened in the past, but really just be with what is happening now in your body. And yeah, just like allowing yourself to just rest in the embrace of the present moment as much as you can. So, whether for you that's meditation or movement or taking walks or just finding a practice that really helps you to connect with the present moment and especially not to anticipate the future. I feel like that's a huge thing during birth and something that really came up for me a lot during my birth. That if I managed to really be present during the breaks, then I was totally like ready to be strong enough to take any contraction, any pushing, um, just by being present with what is and not being caught in what might happen or what has happened so far. So yeah, being in the present moment. And also, as we were talking about before, reprogramming your subconscious mind with visualization, that was a huge piece for me. So yeah, like listening to your beautiful meditation that you have in the natural birth course, or also on YouTube, there's some really beautiful hypnobirthing um, meditations and listening to birth stories, watching these positive birth videos on YouTube. But I would say also like only the ones that resemble what you want to experience. That was like I watched a lot, but I was really selective with which ones I would watch, like making sure that they're like water births at home and peaceful and yeah, that they kind of matched the vibe that I wanted. So that was also beautiful for me. And the last one is something that really took me by surprise. And I think it's pretty common for first-time mamas to plan the birth a lot more than the postpartum and the after, like after pains and recovery time. So really plan for your physical recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really something that kind of took me by surprise, although I knew it intellectually, but to actually feel it in my body, like right after I gave birth, I was still having these contractions, you know, of the uterus getting back to its original size. And yeah, so like somehow I knew it was going to happen, but I hadn't really prepared for what to do when that would happen. I thought, you know, I just gave birth, so I can definitely take the after pains. But actually, that really wasn't the the mindset and the mood that I was in. I really just wanted to relax with my baby and to just take in all this beautiful love and not be preoccupied by how I was feeling in my body. So yeah, I wish I had planned some kind of tincture or like something beautiful and natural to use for that. But I ended up just taking some like painkillers at this point because I really just wanted to feel the connection with my baby without this kind of distraction.
Yeah.
So for my next birth, definitely I'm gonna plan some kind of herbal tea or tincture or like a warm water bag that I can have on my uterus that just ease those sensations. And also for me, I had like a very small tear, but it wasn't very significant. It was just like a superficial first degree tear on both sides of my inner labia. And so I decided to not get stitches for that. But I also didn't really have any plan at this point for what I would do for peeing, for example, because it does, at least for me, like it did sting at first when I went to the toilet. Like it was quite, like intense.
Yeah.
So throughout, like in the first days after birth, I actually like sent my husband to buy some things, and my mother-in-law was super amazing as well, like helping us to buy some things. But definitely for the next birth, now I know that it's really, really helpful to have like a sitz bath, have some salts, a peri bottle for when you go pee, a warm water bag for your uterus when you're having those contractions, like a tincture or something natural for the after pains, and also period pads, something I hadn't really anticipated, but fortunately we did have. Yeah, because even now it's been 12 days since I gave birth, and I'm still having some, like a little bit of bleeding. So it's really nice to have those pads just to feel really ready for your recovery period.
Yes. Oh, I love that you mentioned this, and that makes me think, because you took the natural birth course, but you didn't take the bundle, yeah, with the nursing postpartum.
No,
Ah,
yeah.
this is
Yeah.
so common. You know, I actually
Yes.
spoke to my mentees just about, because we've just finished the postpartum module in the Sacred Birth Worker Mentorship. It's a month diving into the postpartum. And I was just talking about this with my mentees just the other day, saying that, you know, I would say 98% of women either buys the natural birth course or the bundle. I say that's 50-50, and like 2% comes in to buy the nourishing postpartum course. It's so overlooked, and I
Yeah.
think it's just so important to bring this up. I mean, because you're this amazing, beautiful, clever woman that also just went like, I'm going to prepare for the birth, and like, and it's not throwing shame at all, because this is just how we like, this is just how the society is. Even the woman who wants a natural birth just underestimates the postpartum
Yeah,
so
always.
massively. I mean, it's equally as important to prepare for the birth as it is for the postpartum, because the postpartum is actually, in a sense, bigger, especially the first time around with the rite of passage. And like, please, please, if you're listening to this, like, prepare for your postpartum on all levels, like practically
Yeah.
for sure, but also like the emotional transition, the spiritual. I mean, your brain's changing. There's so much that's going on in this rite.
Yeah, and I feel that for me, I prepared for more like the practical part of postpartum, like the food was prepared, like we have like a meal train that's been planned, and like my mother-in-law came over and made food for us. So like this whole part of the like actual practical part we took care of. But what I really overlooked was the physical recovery. I feel like that was something that really took me by surprise.
Yeah.
And now that we have all these beautiful tools like the peri bottle, the sitz bath, all of this, I know that for my next birth, for sure, I'm gonna like take advantage of it right after the birth.
Yeah.
And yeah, just now I know that this is, yeah,
Yes.
this is really helpful. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And as soon as I started using these tools, I felt like, wow, my healing has been just so amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been only 12 days, but now I feel totally good, you know?
Can't believe it's not just 12 days ago. It's not even 2
Yeah.
weeks, and you're sitting here sharing it with us.
Yeah.
So grateful. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your birth story. It
Mm,
was yummy and beautiful.
thank you so much, Anna. And thank you for everything that you do. And it's such a treat for women to get to listen to this podcast. And for me, it's been like such a companion throughout my pregnancy and throughout my birth. So thank you with all my heart for what you do.
Oh, thank you so much. And I can't wait to dive on into the Sacred Birth Worker Mentorship with you in April. Can't wait
Me
for that.
too. So excited.
All right, love.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. If you love this podcast, then please consider sharing it, leave a review, or make a contribution on our Patreon page. And if you want to connect on social media, then find the podcast on Instagram as The Natural Birth Podcast. Thank you for listening.